Truth Unveiled here, keeping you updated with the latest. And today we're going to be going over the government shutdown, and I'm going to be telling you the truth behind this and what they're not really telling you, as well as the bigger agenda. Because if you think that this is a surprise or a coincidence, or oh, it's the Democrats and the Republicans, and oh, they're two separate things, it's time to think again. Puppets playing their roles, puppets playing their parts. But we're here at USA Today that talks more about it, and it says right here that the federal government shutdown rolled into a second day today. Here is a look at where the impasse stands. They're looking to do a vote on a short-term option tomorrow, and again, this is what they're telling us, but we'll see what they actually do and what they actually have planned. But it says here that the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell would force another vote on a short-term funding bill, or a quote, continuing resolution at 1 a.m. tomorrow unless an agreement is reached before that. This bill would be 1 week shorter than the bill they voted on back 2 nights ago, but it is still not clear if there are enough votes for that legislation to pass. Again, this is what they're telling us, puppets playing their roles. But then it says, how did we get here? The shutdown began on 12:01 a.m. just yesterday after Senate's blocked the short-term funding bill 2 nights ago as the prior short-term spending measure expired. Democrats refused to provide the votes needed to reopen the government until they strike a deal with President Trump, protecting young immigrants from deportation, providing disaster relief, and other domestic programs. And that's what your mainstream media, your lying stream media, is going to continue to do, is make it a, oh, Democrats versus Republicans, when we know they play for the same team at the top. For who? The Zionists, the Black Pope, the Jesuits. That's who they're on. Team Satan. That's who they give their allegiance to. But then it says here, will there be a compromise? Both sides are digging into their position. Note again, both sides. But then it says the Senate Majority Leader said that they propose authorizing funding for Trump's wall along the border with Mexico in exchange for protections for Dreamers in a spending bill that included spending for other domestic priorities. But Republicans in the White House have rejected the idea, and McConnell sought to lay blame at the feet of the Democrats. And they even have reports on here too, oh, how both sides are blaming each other, even though we know who's really behind this. But it says here, quote, this shutdown is only going to get a lot worse tomorrow, a lot worse, they said from the Senate floor. Quote, today would be a good day to end it. This shutdown was a political miscalculation of gargantuan proportions, but it doesn't need to go on any longer. Why is there really a shutdown, and how does this affect you? Because we're going to be going over that, and notice how all of this is taking place on a weekend too. And we're going to be talking more about that when it comes to the X-File. But then it talks about here, right here, where it says thousands of federal employees will be placed on furlough, meaning they won't report to work tomorrow. Whoever works for agencies and departments that are considered non-essential, including agencies that pay out small business loans and process passport requests, will cease to work effective immediately until Congress is able to agree on a bill for the federal budget, according to them, even though we know too the truth about the federal budget and the IRS and money and how it's fake and printed. We know all about that too. It's all part of the scheme, all part of politics. Now also pay attention to how this is very reminiscent of the 2013 government shutdown that took place back in October of 2013, and we'll be talking more about that and its effects and some things that we found very interesting and suspicious indeed about that. But back in 2013, about 850,000 employees were placed on this per day, according to the Office of Management and Budget. And although we don't know how long it's going to last, we know it's definitely something to look out for indeed. Now, this report from CNN also says that the White House said that 1,056 members of the executive office of the president would be furloughed, and 659 considered essential would continue to report to work, and that they would still be expected to report to duty tomorrow in a contingency plan according to the website that was posted a few days ago, but they can stay no longer than 4 hours to engage in quote unquote shut down activities. What does this sound like? Are they getting ready for something? And then it talks about your military also, where it says the military is considered essential and will still report for duty. However, the troops, including those in combats, will potentially not be paid during a shutdown. And if the shutdown were to go for weeks, about 1.3 million active duty military will be expected to work potentially without pay, and the military is currently being paid throughout the rest of the week up until the 1st. Also, pay close attention to the problem reaction solution. We know that they caused the problem and then they offer the reaction of, oh my goodness, government shutdown, offering their own solutions to their own caused problems. And we know exactly the bigger agenda. But then here it talks about the special counsel. But I wanted to bring this to your attention in case you already did not know how national parks and gun permits. It says if you had plans for a vacation to visit any national parks, zoos, or museums, some of those may be closed. That's interesting, especially when we consider, and we know darn well that they're getting ready for their shadow government behind closed doors, as we've gone over in previous videos with documentation to prove it from your government specifically, but how they're also doing what? Converting certain things into FEMA camps for martial law. Could this be part of it? Could they be planning to do this? And could this government shutdown, along with the one in 2013, be part of that because they're going to convert these things into FEMA camps and they're testing ahead of time? We'll definitely see, because this report back on USA Today even shows you how the Statue of Liberty and Ellis Island were closed as due to the government shutdown. And then also this report right here from WSB TV in Atlanta that also says right here that Ebenezer Baptist Church, King's Childhood Home, and the Visitor Center were all closed as of yesterday due to the government shutdown. And we know it's other places all across the country too. Now, this part is interesting also, where CNN says here the shutdown will also affect the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, meaning if you wanted a gun permit, you'll have to wait until the shutdown is over. Did you hear that? What does that sound like? Getting ready for what? Gun control and martial law. Because when they're ready to stage the real thing, and we'll be talking more about that, well then guess what? You can no longer get a gun. What are they really getting ready for? But then it says here TSA, air traffic control, and mail services. Essential services such as Social Security, air traffic control, and the TSA will continue to be funded even if some employees of the agencies are not. The USPS won't stop serving residents. You'll still get your mail. Could this be leading to the bank shutdowns also? Well, let's find out, because now we're here at Wikipedia that also talks more about it, but it just says here, a shutdown of the U.S. federal government began at midnight as of yesterday after a failure to pass a relevant legislation funding bill for government operations and agencies stemming from disputes over the status of persons affected by DACA, or Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals immigration policy, and therefore whether those covered under the program should face deportation or have a path to permanent resident or citizenship. And of course, that's what they're telling the sleeping public. We know that this is more preparation for martial law in America and for the government shutdown and national emergency as a whole. And they tell you certain disputes. But I also found it very interesting to note too how the shutdown began on the first anniversary of Donald Trump taking office. Sounds staged to me, automatically reminding me of the U.S. federal government shutdown of 2013 that happened over 4 years ago, that occurred from October 1st to October 17th, 2013. So for a total of 16 days right here, which was the third longest government shutdown in U.S. history after the 18-day shutdown back in 1978, and then the 21-day shutdown that occurred back in 1995 through 1996. Again, more preparation. What are they getting ready for? Why all of these staged shutdowns? What does Congress know, especially after they just so happen to be doing this right after they passed that bill of the 400 years? And let's not forget about the EBT shutdown too that also occurred and took place back in October of 2013, around the same exact time as what occurred with the government shutdown during that time. Because here we are where this report from NBC says EBT card problems caused by server, not shutdown. And this was as of October 12th, 2013, because that's what they want you to believe. But the actual report says EBT cards that allow state welfare departments to issue benefits via a magnetically encoded payment strip appear to not be working in stores across the country. Reports from various news agencies and viewers who have contacted the news say that the cards are being rejected at stores. Many wonder if this has anything to do with what? The government shutdown and the fact that they just so happen to coincide with one another back in 2013. Are they preparing for something similar? Now, as of right now, we do not know how long they're going to stage this shutdown, but it's just very interesting to note how these things coincide with one another. Speaking of preparation, that's what this all has to do with. Now, if you can recall from some of my earlier videos that we've done back in 2016 and even back in 2017 where we talked about bail-ins and banks shutting down, it just so happens that 2 days sooner before the government shutdown, the exact same week, Wells Fargo had a glitch in their system that left some customers with empty accounts, meaning that people who were with Wells Fargo could not access their banks, and with the glitch it caused to lead to some payments being processed twice late and even some accounts being emptied out by double processing. And as I've said in previous videos, see the warning signs ahead of time. Do you think it's a coincidence that this glitch, the banking glitch, happened the exact same week as the government shutdown? It's not looking like it, folks. Which automatically reminds us of the X-Files in season 10, the premiere of My Struggle, because again, it's what? Predictive programming, how they put the truth right in front of us. And again, as we noted earlier, note how this government shutdown takes place on a weekend. Why is that so important? Because that has to do with what? The 72-hour warning before martial law, as many others have noted and have talked about. But now we're going to go over some of the quotes that are in the X-Files from My Struggle, the season 10 premiere of the X-Files. And again, it's just amazing how much truth they put right in front of us, because here Fox Mulder says, no sooner had we defeated Germany than a new threat started appearing in skies over America, drawn to Earth by the latest threat to extinction, the H-bomb. And of course, they want you to think it's a conspiracy theory because your government coined that term. But then it goes on to say, explosions acting as transducers, drawing alien life forms, so-called, because we know the truth about that too, through wormholes in spaceships using electrogravity propulsion, advanced extraterrestrial species visiting us, concerned for mankind and the threat of our self-destruction, forestalling our annihilation through their own self-sacrifice, the crashes at Roswell, more importantly, places like Aztec, and we know what this is all about, and your previous presidents like Reagan and Bush and all those other ones have talked about a so-called alien visitation, even though we know that those are the fallen ones in disguise and they've been here all along. But then it goes on to say, world leaders signed secret memos directing scientific studies of so-called alien technology or fallen one technology and biochemistry. Classified studies were done at military installations S4, Groom Lake, Wright-Patterson, and Dulce, extracting so-called alien tissue. The tests were done on unsuspecting human subjects. Could that explain Project MK Ultra with the CIA and elaborately staged abductions and craft using so-called alien technology recovered from the downed saucers or the chariots, so-called UFOs, including human hybridization through gene editing and forced implementation of the embryos. This sounds like what? Cloning. Oh my goodness. All of this truth right in front of us. And then it says right here, your own government lies as a matter of course. Of course they do. But then it says, but it's not hard to imagine a government hiding, hoarding so-called alien technology for 70 years, if not more than that, at the expense of human life and the future of the plane, driven not only by corporate greed, but a darker objective, the takeover of America. And wow, there's even more truth right here where it says from Tad O'Malley, by severe drought brought on by weather wars conducted secretly using aerial contaminants, what does that sound like? Chemtrails and high altitude electromagnetic waves. So all of those waves, the extremely low frequencies and the low frequencies, the same thing with technology and cell towers to be used for mind control, as we've also talked about in previous videos, in a state of perpetual war to create what? We just talked about this problem, reaction, solution scenarios to distract, enrage, and enslave American citizens at home with tools like the Patriot Act and the National Defense Authorization Act, or the NDAA. And we've gone over these documents in detail that was passed after 9/11 that has to do with what? Turning America into a police state, which abridged the Constitution in the name of national security because they never cared about the Constitution ever. But then it says the militarization of police forces in cities across the U.S., the building of prison camps by FEMA, or Federal Emergency Management Agency, with no stated purpose whatsoever. And we've done plenty of videos talking about that. The corporate takeover of food and agriculture, pharmaceuticals and healthcare, even the military, and clandestine agendas to fatten, dull, sicken, and control a populace already consumed by consumerism, because your government taps your phone, collects your data, and monitors your whereabouts with impunity. A government preparing to use that data against you when it strikes, and the final takeover begins, the takeover of America, according to the show. But when will it be? And do they give us hints? Again, we know they're preparing because it says right here it'll probably start on a Friday. The banks will announce a security action necessitating their computers to go offline all weekend. What does that sound like? Bail-ins, the bank glitching, the bank shutdowns, where digital money will disappear just like Wells Fargo. And then Sveda says they can just steal your money, but they've been doing that all along. Then it says, followed by the detonation of strategic electromagnetic pulse bombs to knock out major grids. What does that sound like? The EMP, the lights going off. Movies such as The Fifth Wave and plenty other predictive programming places like The X-File mention this. Then it says what will seem like an attack on America by so-called terrorists or Russia, which is of course the World War propaganda, or a simulated so-called alien invasion using alien replica vehicles that exist and are already in use. And we've talked about that in our previous videos. We also talked about that and covered that with what? Project Bluebeam. Also, are these just more stages and tests? And is the so-called government shutdown a stage and a massive test for these things to happen? Come martial law and come the declaration thereof. Please seek Yahuwah and his true son Yahusha so that you can be ready for all of these things at all times. But this is Truth Unveiled here, keeping you updated and saying as always, Shalom.